Welcome, welcome. So today I'm going to be discussing what evidence they had. And after the affidavit has been released, we do see that they actually had quite a bit. So we do see that they had quite a bit of vital video footage as well as cellular data to help track Bryan down. And we know from the very beginning they were asking for, residents and businesses in the area to, if they have any video footage, to share that with them. And it really did seem to pay off. And with this information, they were really able to piece together a timeline as well as support the cell data information. So the day of the murders, the November 13th at 2:44, WSU video showed the white Elantra leaving the area. And then at 2:53, another video showed the car en route between Pullman and Moscow. At 3:26 as well as 3:28, there were cameras in the Moscow area showing the car actually heading towards 11:22. And there were multiple cameras showing that between 3:29 and 4:20, the car in the area close to the house. There was also footage at around 4:04 showing his car going up by 500 Queen and turning around, and then was trying to park and having to turn around on King Road. At 4:17, a neighbor's camera did pick up the sounds of whimpering voices, a loud thud, as well as a dog barking. At 4:20, the video was showing that the car was actually leaving this area now at high speeds. And it was also showing that this car did not have a front license plate. We now know the murders took place more like around between 4 and 4:20 rather than 3 and 4 a.m. in the morning. And then at 5:25, there were 5 different cameras that caught the car coming back into Pullman and heading towards his residence. With this footage, a forensic examiner was then able to identify the make and model of this car, and he was able to narrow it down to a 2015 Hyundai Elantra. On the 25th of November, the chief was starting to ask for information about this car. On the 29th of November, Officer Daniel Tiago was able to find the car in the WSU database. He was then able to tell who the car was registered to, which was obviously Bryan. And with this information, he was then able to find out where Bryan lived. He actually drove by, I think it was 1 o'clock in the morning. He drove past Bryan's apartment complex and was able to locate the car. He then did see that the car had one Pennsylvania license plate. And from that, they were then able to track down Bryan's driver's license, and saw that the description from the witness at the murder scene matched that of Bryan. Now, earlier this year in August 21st, he actually was pulled over in the Moscow area, and he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and they collected some vital information. Now, luckily, the police did ask for his phone number. And that's not necessarily a piece of information that they need in order to write out a ticket. But this particular officer did, and he provided it for them. Bryan was actually just coming from watching that house, the 1122 house. He had been sitting there for about an hour, around 10:30-ish to about 11:30-ish, and then he ended up getting pulled over on his way back home. And so he was already starting to case that house. He'd gotten pulled over. The police did have body cam of, Bryan in the white Elantra, And at this point, they had no idea how important this information would be down the road. So now that they have tracked down Bryan's driver's license, the registration of the car, everything else, then they were able to pull from, the records and found his phone number. They were then able to reach out to the carrier, his phone carrier, to start getting warrants for the cell phone information. There was another time when Bryan was pulled over, October 14th of this year again. And so they again were able to verify it was him. It was him in that car. It was him with just the one Pennsylvania license plate. But on November 18th, he actually went in and got Washington state license plates. The initial search warrant was for AT&T to provide his phone records, and what they asked for was actually the time of the murders. So on November 13th, between 3 and 5 a.m. And there was no records found. So what they ended up doing is kind of expanding that a little bit more, having to go and get yet another search warrant, but they expanded it then to include the 12th, so November 12th to November 14th. This information really did provide them a lot. So at 2:42, his phone is showing that he's at his residence in Pullman. At 2:47, it's showing that he's actually leaving his residence and heading out of Pullman, heading towards Moscow. Within that same time frame, then they see that the phone loses signal, which indicated that he had actually turned his phone off. And so then at 4:48 is when his phone started pinging again. And at this point, his cell is showing that he's in Moscow and he's heading back to Pullman, which lines up with what the video footage was showing. So the next morning, they also see that his cell phone is showing that he was leaving his residence at around 9 o'clock, and he went back to the 1122 house. And he was sitting there from about 9:12 till 9:21 a.m. In my personal opinion, I think that he went back there because he had realized that he had lost that sheath. He had left that at the scene. And so maybe he was hoping that he would be able to get back into the house and get it without being seen. But at this point, it was broad daylight, and the risk was just too high. So by 9:32, he was already back at his house. And then cell activity showed later on that early evening, between 5:32 and 5:36, he actually started heading out towards Johnson, Idaho, which is about a little over 2 hours from his residence. And again, at about 5:36 till 8 o'clock, his cell phone was turned off. So we can only speculate that he was, probably trying to get rid of evidence. On the 14th of November, there was no cell activity seen. And then on December 23rd, they issued another search warrant for data records starting from June 23rd of 2022 until the current time. And that's where they determined that he actually had been watching that house. Records show that there were 12 different occasions where he was right at that location, stalking them, watching the house, late evening, early morning hours. And as I had mentioned before, one of those times he was actually pulled over leaving Moscow. Once Bryan had already went to Pennsylvania, the police were actually watching the house, and they were able to, from the trash, they were able to get a DNA profile of Bryan's father. And that was very instrumental because it was showing that there was 99.998% of the population could be excluded from that DNA, and his father's, which would have been a paternal DNA match, was not able to be excluded. So that's very, very promising. So it'll be really interesting to see how Bryan's defense team will try to poke holes into the evidence that the police do have. So I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, be safe, and I hope you have a great day.